So one big advantage of coming from tennis, or really probably any other racket sport, is the footwork required. Like, it's not forgiving at all in tennis. And in pickleball, I feel like you can get away with a little bit lazier footwork, but having higher level footwork does help you be better. And I think the lack of negative feedback for like lazier footwork makes it easier to get away with, and even easier to become a lot better without having that under you. But in tennis, it's just not gonna happen. And I think being a lot more intentional with that stuff is like a big strength that tennis players carry in, like the setup and like prepping the shot before you hit it, having your feet ready, having your weight where you want it so you can use it however you want it. If you want to use your body weight to absorb the pace, or if you want to use your body weight to add pace, you know, always kind of being loaded and ready is a big advantage that you can learn if you don't currently have it. But a lot of people coming from tennis, where you literally will not get the ball over the net if you don't have those things, it's something that's going to be like a lot more drilled into those players. Yeah, so I think in the past, while the game was a lot more defensive and the ball was moving a lot slower and people weren't hitting quite as extreme shots, you could get away with that lazier footwork. But as the game gets more and more aggressive, and even up at the kitchen line when you're dinking, the pace is increasing and getting faster, I think getting like a little bit more solid footwork under you will be a big thing that will help any player improve no matter where they're at. One big limiting factor for people moving from tennis over to pickleball, I think, is honestly a little bit of the strength, some of the prep. So one big thing that I did was, you know, tennis, you want a big loose stroke. Same in pickleball. Like, you want your arm to be loose, you want your grip to be loose, your wrist, everything should be loose. But for me, part of how I would force myself to do that all the time in tennis was by having this huge backswing. And it was honestly an advantage, especially because I played with a pretty heavy racket. So you get that thing moving and it just plows through the ball. But the thing is, like in pickleball, when you're only 14 feet away from the other person and the ball's moving between you at like 20, 30 miles an hour, you don't really have time for that. So a big thing that I think can help a lot of tennis players is just to kind of shrink that backswing without losing the habit. Because for me, it was like anytime I would get stressed out during a match, I would just think about the backswing and just like opening my shoulder up and getting it loose, and that would, my rest of my arm would kind of follow and be loose. And that's something that I struggle with, because whenever I get stressed out in pickleball, like if I'm playing a team where they're just better than me, or you know, whatever their strategy is really putting me under a lot of pressure, like I want to like lean back into that, because that's like my comfort habit. And it worked in tennis. You know, in tennis it really did loosen up my stroke and let me still hit the ball well while I was under pressure. But in pickleball, like getting that big motion, which feels very comfortable and very familiar, was actually a disadvantage because of the timing. Like the court's just so much shorter and you don't have time to do all of that. And you also don't really gain like a meaningful advantage. Like it doesn't benefit your shot to have a big backswing like that. So a lot of those strengths, like aggressive grips, just being comfortable using extreme grips, being comfortable changing your grip all the time between shots, depending on where you are on the court, and then also the footwork. Those were a lot of strengths that I think came from tennis and helped my pickleball game. But in a way, they could also be a weakness, because pickleball, it's a lot smaller, you know, the paddles, the balls are all lighter, it moves a little bit slower. So you kind of need to simplify some of that. So that's the challenge of making the transition from tennis to pickleball, is kind of trying to not just do too much, really. Like you need to take these things like your grip and being able to be loose and getting your body weight set, but you need to kind of condense it a little bit so that it can happen faster, because you really don't need quite the energy or momentum to redirect a pickleball like you do in tennis. And also you don't have the time to do all of that. A few things to look out for if you are switching from tennis to pickleball. For me, one of the biggest things was I mostly played singles in tennis. I did play doubles and I enjoyed it, but in tennis, like your partner is probably like 15 feet away from you. And in pickleball, I find like I would just keep bumping into my partner because they're like, you know, like 2 steps away. Oh, my bad.
I was ready though.
I should have let you take that. I honestly, like in pickleball, I prefer singles, and I'm way better at singles because I just feel claustrophobic when there's like someone all up in my bubble. I'm like, why is there someone right next to me? It didn't make sense. And like I would step on their toes, because the job of, you know, a doubles player is different in tennis to pickleball. Like in tennis, if you're at the net, you should either be like trying to hit the ball or faking that you're gonna hit the ball. Whereas in pickleball, like there's a lot of situations where you just need to like get out of your partner's way and make some space for them to do their thing. And I really struggled with that because on a tennis court, like you don't have to make space for your partner because there's just so much space and it's just a different, different dimension. So another thing to look out for as a tennis player is with your footwork, you do have a solid base under you, but you need to kind of like slow your steps down a little bit, because I found like I would just take off like bounding and it's like, oh, it's like not that big. You don't really need to sprint like that. And taking like, well, I say slow down, but taking faster, smaller steps allowed me to be like a little more precise. Especially playing outdoor, there's a lot more unpredictability in the flight path of a pickleball. So taking smaller steps allows you to kind of adjust your positioning a little more as you see the ball kind of moving around. Another thing that held me back at first was I would always try to use like my full Western grip at the kitchen, and I just kind of learned that with how tight everything is, that's just not always the best option. It leads to a lot of mishits, and you have a lot of motion with your arm and wrist to do on a ball that's just kind of coming from not very far away. Going a little bit less aggressive on my grips really added to my game in that it kind of allowed me to adjust later and commit to a shot a little bit later. Kind of lets you be a little more deceptive and control the point more. The last thing is the game style. So I'll be honest, I kind of cap out at around like a little over a 4-0 in doubles. And that's because I just don't care to like get into the soft game. I'm a little bit of a menace, and I tend to be nowadays pretty particular who I'll play with. I have like a few buddies that are just down. I mean, we're like street balling. Like we're out here. I mean, each of us has like a handful of gimmicks, and then we just hit hard. We go, I mean, I always like I said, mentioned earlier, I try to picture like you're trying to hit around their knees to shins, because if you can get the ball moving fast that low, they're gonna pop it up. And there's very few people that are not like borderline pros that can actually cope with that. I just kind of realized like early on, I was getting frustrated trying to learn dinking and get better, and not that I can't do it, but I just like, it's not that fun to me. So I just learned like, here's how I like to enjoy the game. And I don't think I'll ever be able to be a pro, especially not at doubles, but I just want to enjoy the game my way. And I've found like friends who do. And the only other downside to that I've found is typically most people don't like to play that way. So we only get to play with like higher level players who want the challenge of like, dang, like they just drive the shit out of it. But it is a little bit unfriendly. And if you're a highly aggressive tennis player like I was, and like I feel like more of my friends from tennis were, you're gonna have to learn that from the more social aspect, you might have to play a little bit nicer if you do the charity tournament or something.